Very good. And we have a couple of questions from the floor, which we'll get to first. The first one was directed at Justine and Hojoon, but if anybody else has a point of view on it, by all means, speak up. The question runs like this. What is the best statement to use when you're trying to measure identification and ethical congruence? And specifically, it sounds like they're doing research in the area of Black Lives Matter and women's economic equality. So Justine, do you want to take a stab at it first, and then Hojoon, and then if either Jay or Steve have a point of view, by all means weigh in.
Sure, I was actually just reading Hojoon's response to Chloe now. I agree with what he had said, and I think if she's asking for like survey development questions, which it seems that might be, I think that it's important not to be isolating or to be too narrow in it. I think making broader questions of, does this advertisement align with your value propositions, or do you feel as though you identify or align with these advertisements? And then you can ask some demographical qualifiers with that. I think you're able to see that without being isolating to the individual who may be reading it, or also from a kind of research standpoint without leading the participant into a certain direction, which I think can cause some problems down the line with some survey research, is making them answer in a way that you want them to answer versus making it a little bit more open-ended and broader for them.
Super. Hojoon, do you want to read your response for everybody? I'm not sure everybody saw it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as I already typed the statement, so I'm not sure the 100% whether I understand the question, but my suggestion is the beyond just knowing about psychological the propensity. So we need to understand the background, cultural or social or educational background of target audiences, because the consumer's ethical threshold and judgment, they are quite different, and those each different. The ethical judgment and threshold and the notion is established by their social, educational, and cultural institutions like family, school, and education system. So even for the the women's economic equality issue, the feminist perspectives have different views. For example, liberal feminist view is more competent and more positive. So now we are equal between men and women, but radical the feminist view still quite negative. So we are losing too much from the the male-oriented patriarchy system. But although I did not mention about the other feminism perspective, so for example, social feminism view thinks the unequal economic system is due to the capitalism system, so beyond the social or kind of the educational the system. So so my suggestion is the beyond knowing about the simple psychological measurement to target the consumer audience, practitioners are suggested to understand and know target audience the background, and try to develop advertising message which fit with that and satisfy the kind of their different backgrounds.
Thank you. Steve, we do have a question for you. Do you know, the question from the floor was whether or not you had an understanding of whether this viewing was active or passive viewing, like a background viewing?
Yes, well, we didn't get that measured in our report. In 1992, there wouldn't have been too much multitasking, although people would have been reading magazines and maybe leaving the room. Like historically, it's been like a third, a third, a third. A third actively watching the screen, a third maybe passively avoiding by leaving the room or reading a magazine, and then a third mechanically avoiding by switching channels.
There's yeah, I'm sorry. There's a lot of interest in the market right now about the cognitive differences between radio and television. Do you have any sense of what those differences are? From a neuro point of view, do people encode memory differently between those two media?
Well, of course, in radio, you wouldn't have any visual memories, although right. You can have imagery, concrete imagery in the words, which can give you some imagery, I suppose, to remember. But it would be good to do a comparison between television and radio properly, where radio is the background task And that's very hard to organize in an experiment. But if it was done properly, then I think you would find that there's more cognitive operations going on with the TV because you're paying a lot of attention to it, whereas with the radio, it's going in and out as it's the background to your main task.
So we'll keep these answers short because we only have 3 minutes left, but this is for everybody, and we'll start with Jay, and that is basically what are the elements, creative elements that might promote relaxation and escape. And for Justine and Hojoon, both of you talked about appeal. So if you just tweak that question a little bit to refer to appeal. So let's start with Jay, the elements that would promote. Do you have a sense of what actually would promote relaxation and escape in a creative element?
Is this a question for me?
For Jay.
Justine.
Yeah. No, it's for Jay, I'm sorry. It's for you, Jay.
Oh, in cause marketing adverts?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the wrong question. That actually would have been for Steve. I'm sorry. I got my names mixed up. Steve, that actually was what I had for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a point of view on it.
Yeah, it was something we were going to address in the presentation, but I didn't get time. But yeah, so ads need to address the same needs for relaxation and escape that video content does. So don't expect people to pay a lot of attention to a lot of information or to respond interactively to ads because they're lying back relaxed.
Okay, so this one is for Jay, and that was to ask you about what was the pattern of cause marketing. You showed the increase in cause marketing until recently, but before, during, and now later in the COVID stage. Are you finding in the US as an example, it was all about cause marketing in the early days in sort of March and April up to about May, and now things are settling down, especially on local television. What are you seeing where you are in terms of the use of cause marketing related to COVID?
That's a great question, Paul. Thank you. I think you know, when sort of following the trends, and as you rightly said, in the beginning there was a lot of activities. Lots of companies started, you know, for Burberry, for example, started producing PPE kits. Alcohol brands, manufacturers of beer started producing sanitizers, hand sanitizers. There's a lot of activity in the initial couple of months or so. I think that's probably settling down a little bit now, but still, my take on this is that if cause-related marketing has to be continued, it should be now crisis-focused. So it should be looking at the pandemic and how to address the effects of the pandemic, rather than doing a more general kind of, you know, what they were doing in the past. So, for example, one company in the US, they were manufacturing the casings for mobile phones, and then they also produced this sanitizer, which sanitizes the mobile phone in 3 minutes. And all the initial earnings, about $100,000, were given to the charity, which was fighting the COVID. So I think this kind of activities, which again are genuine activities supporting this fight against the pandemic, will be seen more favorably in the long term by the consumers.
Thank you for that. That's a good way to close the session. Our producers are saying we have run out of time. So I want to thank all of our speakers and Annette for giving us excellent presentations and excellent insights. The full stories are in the journal for all of our audience if they want to really dig down into the details. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then just to make you aware, on Thursday, be sure to tune in for Conversations with Great Minds featuring the winner of the ARF Irwin Efron Demystification Award, that's Josh Chasen from VideoAmp, and Greg Lyons from PepsiCo Beverages North America, winner of the Chief Marketing Officer Great Mind Award. So thanks again all, stay safe, and we'll catch you the next time.